Tuvimos una conversación con el
We had a conversation with President Trump. Yesterday, through the embassy, we were informed that he would call today at 8 a.m. We had sought a conversation with him and requested a call.
y fue una conversación.
It was a long conversation, more than half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, something like that. We discussed topics of common interest.
Le planteé que
I told him that we had been working together on migration, and it had been effective. Our approach has always been based on protecting and respecting human rights. We also discussed our shared interest in reducing fentanyl trafficking between Mexico and the United States.
al final me preguntó que
At the end, he asked how long we could put the tariffs on hold, and I told him, let's put them on hold permanently. He then asked, well, for how long? I responded, let's pause them for a month, and I'm confident that in a month, we will deliver results for both his people and Mexico.
pero también le expliqué
At the same time, I explained the gravity of the number of high-powered firearms illegally coming into Mexico from the U.S. These high-powered weapons empower criminal groups and give them firepower. We also asked the U.S. to help prevent arms trafficking from their country into ours. He agreed.
Donald Trump's stunning change of heart on tariffs.
Yeah, he spoke to Mexico's president a short time ago, and the two leaders emerged with a deal.
Yeah, Mexico has agreed to send additional National Guard forces to police the border with the U.S. And President Trump has agreed to pause for 1 month his 25% tariff on all imports coming from Mexico. But the U.S. has not cut a deal yet with China or Canada, two other nations with tariffs hanging over them. Time now for The Exchange. Joining us is Gillian Tett, a columnist and editorial board chair for the Financial Times. A dizzying array of headlines just in the last few hours, Gillian, and the market responding accordingly. Here we have at least a 1-month freeze in tariffs on Mexico. I'm wondering, in your view, is this the off-ramp that perhaps both sides, Mexico and the Trump administration, were looking for? And what, if anything, do you think Claudia Sheinbaum was able to achieve that Justin Trudeau, at least until now, because we know they have a phone call scheduled, another one, the second for the day, in just a couple of hours, that he wasn't able to agree to with President Trump?
Well, there's a couple of points to make. Firstly, this was the off-ramp that investors in the financial markets were expecting, because in fact, the market reaction to the announcement of Trump's tariffs yesterday was not that dramatic. And I think many investors were saying this is all bluster and show, and he will eventually climb down and cut deals with people. And so we don't know exactly why Trump agreed to this. It may be because he wanted to show that actually when other countries come and bring tribute, i.e. do things that he wants them to do, he gets a lot more easy to deal with. I often think that Trump is running his government a bit like Louis XIV in Versailles, the Sun King, or King Henry VIII in the Tudor royal court. He wants to see his courtiers and other people, emissaries from other countries, come and kiss the ring and bow the knee and offer a tribute. So the fact that Claudia Sheinbaum basically offered to send troops to the border is obviously what he was looking for. We'll see whether this agreement sticks or not. But of course, the next question is, he's now going to be dealing with Canada. He's threatening Europe, the European Union. The gossip is that there's going to be 10% tariffs announced against the EU soon. And so this game is going to continue, which of course is desperately destabilizing for financial markets, and also very, very destabilizing for any businesses trying to plan investment.
Yeah, the markets hate uncertainty. Just in terms of American businesses operating in Canada, Justin Trudeau is telling Canadians, listen, you have to choose Canadian products over American products. As you point out, though, this could just be about Donald Trump expecting foreign allies to essentially just sort of kiss the ring. It could just be much more about dominance. In terms of his phone call with Justin Trudeau, I mean, Justin Trudeau is basically on his way out. He's not going to be prime minister for that much longer. What does he do? Does he opt for the sort of appeasement route, just like Claudia Sheinbaum?
Well, it's a very interesting question, because there are two things to realize. Firstly, on the side of the Trump group, I asked one of them quite recently, why are you going after Canada? Canada is not sending lots of fentanyl south the border. You don't have hordes of immigrants coming from Canada. Why on earth are you picking on Canada that's supposed to be a friend? And what this person told me, who's close to Donald Trump, is it's just sport. We're showing who's boss. We're showing who's in charge in our backyard, if you like. And so a lot of the reason why they're picking on Canada is because they know that the government is weak. They know there's a tremendous amount of criticism of Trudeau already in Canada. And now we know he's on his way out. And he's on his way out partly because of the crisis caused by the original Trump flex, as they call it. So in many ways, they've already won half their battle. As for what Trudeau does, I mean, he tried kissing the ring. He went down to Mar-a-Lago. He was heavily criticized inside Canada for doing that, not just by the opposition parties, but also by people within his own camp, like Chrystia Freeland. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens next, because you do have people like Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland who are vying to replace Trudeau, trying to take a tough stance and really stand up to Trump. You have a lot of emphasis on we must all pull together as Canadians, and yet you also have an opposition party in Canada who are quite Trump-focused and have echoes of the Trump approach to the way they conduct themselves. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, even just sort of taunting Canada and labeling it as the 51st state. I mean, obviously, it is clearly about showing who's boss, as you point out, Gillian. We have to leave it there. We are out of time. Always good to see you, though. Thank you so much, Gillian Tett from the Financial Times.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Given what you're hearing from your sources at the White House, your extensive understanding of how Trump operates, particularly on the world stage, obviously, ultimately, he didn't want to have tariffs. He doesn't want to have tariffs. He uses well, I shouldn't say that. I think he does, maybe he does want them for China, but he likes to use this as a weapon to get what he wants.
Yep, totally.
On various things, at least in the short term for Mexico. There's a month for him to work that out. But what does it tell you that he agreed at least to that 1 month delay in Mexico?
Well, it tells me that he's comfortable with whiplash, which we knew, and we're seeing that whiplash just in terms of how quickly this story has moved, but also in the markets. I mean, he referenced having some short-term pain over the weekend. You saw short-term pain on the Dow Jones this morning when it dropped 500 points, and then after he said he would agree to negotiate with Mexico, it's come back up quite a bit. And, you know, that is a metric that he cares about too. It's not one that Joe Biden said he cared about, but it's certainly one that President Trump does. So I think that's something he's watching. It certainly tells me that. And yet he's also comfortable with the threat hanging over our closest allies, Canada and Mexico, depending on what kind of negotiations lead to with this favorite word of his, which is tariffs. So I think you're right that he would like to be able to say, I've got a deal, and he's clearly open to some negotiation with our partners on with the U.S. partners on the southern border, but the threat's not going away.
So let's just look before we get into more of the politics of it, about the issue, the things that people will be paying more for in the United States. Food, beer and alcohol, fuel and energy, cars and car parts, steel, lumber and furniture, electronics, home appliances, and toys, just to name a few.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? I don't know if Trump doesn't want tariffs. He's talking about them a lot, and it seems like he wants to be seen as very tough. And he did talk about short-term pain, and we'll see what happens with Canada. But the problem is, and I think for the politics of this, is the idea that Americans would be willing to accept short-term pain is not the America I know, okay? You know, at the end of the day, when people elected Trump, they would talk about they want to lower the cost of goods. They thought he would be great for the economy. And it seems like right now, with everything that he's doing, nothing is talking about lowering costs. Nothing is talking about helping the economy. It's all about tariffs and DI and all of this stuff. And it seems like he's getting away from what people actually elected him to do. And I think that's why you see him pulling back a little bit, because there will be a cost, especially if the price of gasoline and these price points, food, groceries, if that goes up, he will have to face some repercussions for that.
And I stopped myself from saying he doesn't like tariffs, because anybody who paid attention to him 30 years ago, 40 years ago, he talked as a business person about using tariffs, but using them as a negotiating tactic, which is clearly doing right now. I saved you for last in this first round here, because I do want to play Mitch McConnell. He was on 60 Minutes last night, and here's what he says about the notion of tariffs.
People drive the cost of everything up. In other words, it'll be paid for by American consumers. I mean, why would you want to get in a fight with your allies over this?
Yeah, look, it's also interesting. His successor, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune, has not said anything about these tariffs that Trump has threatened on Canada and delaying on Mexico, apparently. And why? Perhaps because Thune represents a big ag state and that a lot of his farmers...
That's pretty close to the northern border.
Absolutely. And they would get hammered potentially by a 25% tariff going into effect on Canada. So we'll see what Thune has to say when he comes back to the Senate this afternoon. You can be sure we'll be asking him about that. But other Republicans have fallen in line. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has gushed about this, has said that the revenue coming into the government could potentially help pay for their big agenda that they want to push through Congress. But there are so many Republicans in the Mitch McConnell camp, many of them who are quiet because they don't want to speak out against Donald Trump. They've been free traders for most of their career.
Totally.
Trump is completely opposite on that key position. But there are some concerns. We've heard from Susan Collins, a key swing vote, raising concerns. Maine, of course, relies heavily on Canada, particularly with issues of home heating oil. Chuck Grassley is concerned about how farmers will be hurt in Iowa by this trade war. So the concerns aren't over yet.